Jose Mourinho phones me because I was arguing with some of the older players. I think it was Michael Carrick and Ashley Young, who were the best professionals that you could meet. And I was just saying, like, well, you are getting all the decisions, so like, at least be fair. Like, we're trying our best here, but they're just giving you everything. No wonder we're losing, pretty much along them sort of lines, except a little bit, a couple of swear words in there and every now and again. And Mourinho spoke to me and said, listen, you need them to like you. You can't make them think that you're a and I was like, the complete opposite. I really didn't want him to think that I was like that only whenever I was on the pitch. And I remember going home and he dressed me down, to be fair. He gave me a ridicule, and he was one of them ones where it was like, who do you think you are sort of thing? You've done nothing. And I was like, I was still living in digs at the time, and I went home in my car and I was like, and it turned out that a couple of months down the line, the fitness coach spoke to me and said, he liked stuff like that deep down. He was just testing you out to see how you'd react. And I was like, do you know what? I knew it, but I didn't want. I thought it was over before it even started. The way how forceful he was.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you thought that was going to be the end of your.
I thought it was. I would not even get a chance to even train with him. And then one of the players went on loan, and he put me in the first team squad, and I think he seemed to like me from there. Because I didn't really change either. I forgot about that conversation. And then a couple of months later,
did you turn up the next day and be all humble and different with the guys?
I was maybe a bit quieter in the next couple of weeks, but once you forget about it and it's all old news sort of thing in terms of information in your brain, I just was back to normal, maybe being a little bit loud.
So can I ask you about that first training session, or the first time you start to go in amongst the first team squad? Because we've been lucky enough to speak to a few people that have described that experience to us. Like Phil Neville spoke about training with Cantona and just being blown away by, he used a phrase, he said, the endless repetition of simple things. So how did you respond? Did you feel you needed to do something different than what you'd been doing with Warren and the reserves, or explain it to us?
So with Paul McGuinness in the under-18s, we had a lot of the tactical elements, and with Warren Joyce, we had a lot of the physical elements. So whenever you go up to the first team, you're pretty much prepared for both. And then you get up there and you're training with Wayne Rooney, Zlatan, Romelu Lukaku at the time, Paul Pogba was just coming back. Some of these guys, the levels were ridiculous, so strong in terms of whenever I first went over, you felt like you couldn't get near them, how good they were and how sharp their brains were. Michael Carrick was a perfect example. He's probably one of the best players that I've ever trained with and been coached by. He was, honestly, the way that his mind worked was 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. Obviously not, but the way that he thought about the game was...
In what way?
Just how he approached it in terms of he could see maybe a few flaws in your game, and he would see that before you even notice it yourself, and he's just training with you. And then when he's a coach, he would mention little things that would come off in a game, and little times when to check your shoulder and when to do ones around the corner, and whatever team that you're playing against. The level of detail that he went into was amazing, and obviously I got to train with him whenever I first went into the first team, and you could see it firsthand. He was incredible.
And what were the lads like with you? Because like, you're coming to take their place. You're this young upstart from the United youth teams and the reserve teams. And by the way, it would have been clear that Jose was a fan of yours from the things that he was saying and the way he was acting. So how were they?
The lads have always been, every changing room year by year have been amazing. They've all been such great lads, and I couldn't fault them for that because they make you feel so welcome as well. It's not just like you turn up one day and it's like, who's this kid? Like, what's he doing here? Do you know what I mean? They incorporate you in everything, the jokes and the banter and stuff like that. And now at the moment, we've got a really, really good group in terms of that, like the jokes and the camaraderie and stuff like that. And everyone gets involved with it, which is what you need to have a successful team as well. Yeah.
But when we spoke to Rio Ferdinand, he told us about when he first joined Manchester United from Leeds, and he recounted Roy Keane whacking a ball at him. So it was difficult to control, and when it bounced off him, he said, you don't get much for £18 million.
Yeah.
And he felt there was somebody there just setting the standards to say, how are you going to react to this? This is Manchester United, we do things differently here.
Yeah.
Did you ever have experiences where, you described the referee an example, but where you felt you were being tested to see whether you're worthy of a place in that dressing room?
Loads. So it even happens today, like you do the boxes before the game, and Ashley Young was loud, and you had other characters who were loud characters. You make one bad pass in the box and it was like, oh, he's had no breakfast today, he ain't ready. But like saying it in front of everyone and you're like, nah, I'm ready. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that just makes young players come up and think, like, you have to be on it. If you're not on it, then lads, experienced pros as well, will see it straight away.
What's your memory of the standard that you have to get to be a United first team player?
Yeah, I would probably say Wayne Rooney, to be honest with you. Whenever I first went over, they were preparing for the Europa League final. And just the shooting after, whenever they ping it to the edge of the box and you've got to finish with both feet. And he was ridiculous. It was the goalkeeper. It might as well not had a goalkeeper in there, because it was just stanchion, bottom corner, side netting, posting, and he probably won't even remember it because it was just normal. And I remember watching it thinking, like, that is absolutely incredible. And do you know what? He was so humble about it, and if you had to speak to him about anything, he would give you good advice and stuff like that. And it's no surprise that he's going to be a great manager as well.
You've got two ways to go there, though, haven't you? You've either got, I'm going to get to that point, or I can never get to that level.
Yeah.
So where did you go?
It's difficult for young players as well, because sometimes when you're watching them, it's like, well, yeah, it's Wayne Rooney, but then when you're training against them, you can't be like dipping your toe in and not wanting to tackle them and stuff like that. You have to go in and go for him. That's it. Like the manager would prefer that anyway. He wouldn't want you to be tiptoeing around him and not wanting to injure anyone. You've got to go and play your normal game, and I felt like I always tried to do my best at that.
There's so many moments in your story up until this point, before you've even kicked a ball in the Man United first team, where you could have just gone, this is too much. I can't deal with this.
There is times like that. There is times like that. It's the coaches at Man United are the best in the world at making young footballers feel like they can do anything, and also not getting them too much on the high horse, because they'll bring you straight back down to earth and level you straight away. And that was one of the best things that I had with Neil Ryan and Dave Bushell, Paul McGuinness, all those guys. They were immense at it. I cannot speak highly enough of them. They were the ones that kept all the group grounded. Me, Marcus, Axel Tuanzebe, Dimitri Mitchell, Devontae Redmond, players like that, who some of the lads had quite big egos for 13, 14, 15 years old, because they've got the Nike contracts and they're getting a little bit of money here from doing whatever and stuff like that. And the families are got big expectations on them to play in the first team, and they'll just keep them at a level playing field. There was no...
How?
Just by the way that they went about it, the words, the way that they'd speak to parents, the way that they would coach you. They'd almost coach you like you was like 5 to 6 years old when you're actually like 13, 14, because it was that discipline. We always had to wear black boots. Stuff like that makes a massive difference.
Well, let's talk then about the first team, because, eventually you get offered a professional contract, right, at Manchester United. And I think the really interesting thing that maybe people either don't know or may have forgotten is that you signed a pro deal, and it was 4 years till you kicked a ball in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So that moment when you sign, you think, this is it. This is the moment. Here I go. I'm now going to be a professional footballer. How challenging was that period there, where you were so close to getting it, but for various reasons it was a long wait?
Do you know what? When you look back at it now and you realise the standard and the levels in the first team, whenever you first go over, it is a little bit mind-blowing, and you're going over there with a little bit of like the bee in the bonnet, thinking that I'm the man and I can come and train with you, and then you see the standard of the players that you're playing with. It's high level, and it's sink or swim. You have to do your best to show people that you're ready and that you're capable of performing in that team.
Give us an example of either a player or a moment where you thought, oh, that's the level I now need to be at if I'm going to be a first teamer.
Whenever I first went over, this was maybe the start of the 2017 season, and I wasn't confirmed in the first team squad at the time, and I was going over to train with Jose Mourinho and his staff, and all the players were there, and there was a lot of lads away on the international break, and I went over and trained with them. The referees were a little bit biased towards the first team lads, and it was the young lads versus the old lads, and it was getting too much where I was losing my temper, and I was like, nah, this isn't right. This, like, if you're going to referee the game, referee it properly. Don't just give every single one of the first teamers all the decisions and stuff like that. And I'm maybe raising my voice a little bit too much more than...
And how old are you at this point?
19.
Right. And 19. Are you fearful about going in and being loud in front of a load of experienced Man United first team players?
Looking back in hindsight, it's probably the right thing to do, but also the wrong thing to do.